Welcome to Latino Focus, the show that honors the presence of the Latino community here in our area. Today in our show, we talk with Camille Llanes Fontanilla, Executive Director of Somos Mayfair, to learn more about this organization and how they have been helping the Latino community in San Jose. Later, in our flavors segment, we had a conversation at Gourmex 2015 with renowned Mexican chef Diego Hernandez Baquedano, and to cover our Arts Alive segment, we invited Quinteto Latino with unique sounds inspired in Latin America. And why don't we start our show with one of their performances filmed at a local school here in San Jose. Adelante. More about Quinteto Latino later in the show. For now, we have Camille Llanes Fontanilla, Executive Director of Somos Mayfair. Camille, welcome to the show and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Camille, tell me, I want to know a little bit more about Somos Mayfair, what the organization does and how it came about.
Sure. We actually started in 1997 and we were born out of a neighborhood initiative called the Mayfair Improvement Initiative. And for the first 8 years of our organization, we were fully funded by the Hewlett Foundation. And most of our work was projects that were identified by community members themselves. It was a little bit more than 90 projects that were identified and worked on for the first 8 years of our organization. After that, we transitioned into a self-sustaining nonprofit organization. And so we are a community-based organization that really uplifts the voices and talents of neighborhood residents to get active in their own neighborhood.
Wow, that's great. And how did you become involved with Somos Mayfair?
I actually came to Somos Mayfair in hopes of being a board member. Interestingly enough, I was at another nonprofit organization. I was their development director, really focused on fundraising. And I came to Somos in hopes that I could provide fundraising support and insight on the board level. Simultaneously, my own cousin was facing detention and deportation, and he actually grew up in the Mayfair neighborhood. And so for me, after learning more about the organization and seeing the intersect between education, health, immigration, and all the many things that affect our community, I wanted to play a much deeper role in the organization.
How many programs does Somos Mayfair handle, and how do you introduce them to the community?
We do have a vast amount of work that we do at Somos. Over the last 5 years, though, we've tried to put it all under one umbrella. And the umbrella of our work is really called the In Our Hands campaign. We believe at Somos, from inception, since 1997, the core part of our work, the thing that we do really, really well, is leadership development and training of community residents. So that's really where we start all of our work. We train neighborhood residents to be able to deliver programming in our neighborhood, to be able to be advocates for their kids in the school district. And it's really that is the core basis of how we start our work. But with the In Our Hands campaign, we then rallied the community under a North Star goal of closing the achievement and opportunity gap in third grade reading. So using this tool of community organizing and leadership development, we've oriented our entire base of community leaders to be working on that goal. So when you look at our different programs that we have, it's everything from raising a reader book bag exchanges so that kids have access to more than 100 books through the school year, kids who otherwise wouldn't have access to those kinds of resources. We have a bookmobile on a bicycle that goes through the neighborhood once a week. We have reading circles for kids where they're actually done in Spanish, so we're really uplifting the language and the culture of our families rather than constantly, negating it. And one thing that they're really working on is local control funding formula, which is a new law that was enacted last year in the state of California, where students of low-income background, foster youth, or English language learners have more funding coming to them in their school districts. And so we've supported parents in gaining the leadership training that they need to understand what does that funding mean and how, as parents, can they make some decisions in their own local schools.
Wow, important work.
Really important.
Yes. And I know that for Somos Mayfair, the power is given back to the community so they could create the change. Tell me a little bit about how that actually happens and how are these community members being engaged?
Sure. We really believe in our really strong, robust, what we call leadership power pipeline. So the way we do our work is families come to us first in need of support. We are a First Five Family Resource Center in the neighborhood, so we have access to all the evidence-based curriculums on positive parenting, early literacy, all the things families can do to support their children at a very young age. So many families come to us in need of something at first, and they're participants in these programs. Through our process of engaging them and kind of sharing our learning with them and also amongst each other, they then start to move from participant to then wanting potentially to be a leader in the neighborhood. We go through a lot of leadership development training, everything from learning how to facilitate meetings, how to door knock in the neighborhood so they can get other neighbors involved, how to do a power analysis of school district, city, and county governments. And so all of this is framed into a curriculum that we've built and sometimes alongside with partners. So families go through this and then they emerge as what we call promotoras or peer educators. And that's how we bring the power back to the community.
Wow. And what does it take to be a promotor?
Really, first of all, it takes a commitment. So it takes this desire and this passion to want to be involved in your community in a way that you might not have been before. And then from there, it's really just participating in our leadership development program, which goes all year long. There's training every single month. They also have a mentor who's someone on our staff. And so really being trained and supported is what it takes to become a promotora.
And Somos Mayfair is involved with schools. Where else are people being able to obtain all this information and the resources from Somos?
Yeah, so we are, like I mentioned, we are a First Five Family Resource Center, so people can come directly to our building, which is on King Road. So people can come to us. We're a family resource center. We offer developmental screenings for kids. So if people are concerned that their kids might have a developmental delay or may need some extra support around speech or vision or hearing, we can do that. They can also go to our local schools, like you mentioned. So we're in the elementary schools in the Mayfair neighborhood right now. That's Cesar Chavez Elementary and San Antonio Elementary School. They can also, we have programming at the Alum Rock Library on Wednesdays. So I think we're all over the neighborhood, actually. Reading circles happen in people's homes. Wow. Our bicycle library goes through the heart of the neighborhood and ends up at Mayfair Park. So the best way to access that information would be going on our website or following us on Facebook.
Okay, and the website is?
somosmayfair.org.
Okay, great. And are there any organizations that Somos works with directly?
We are a part of several collaborations, which is awesome, but it's also a lot of work. We have one right in the neighborhood. It was Somos alongside 3 other nonprofit organizations based in Mayfair who came together, and we basically made a commitment to really trying to work together and integrate our approaches to support families more moving into the future. So that would include the School of Arts and Culture at the Mexican Heritage Plaza, Grail Family Services, and Amigos de Guadalupe, which is at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church. So the 4 of our organizations are knee-deep in really trying to figure out a collective impact model right now. We are also on a local control funding formula coalition that's kind of county-wide, and we do that work with Californians for Justice and people acting in community together. So we're in a lot of different spaces. Our In Our Hands initiative is specifically focused on partnering with our local schools, Alum Rock Union School District, and Reading Partners, and that's another collaborative. So we're definitely in a lot of different things, but I think, you know, when you're in a neighborhood, like I mentioned earlier, education, health, immigration, all these things kind of come together and affect Mayfair residents. So we believe in being in these different collaboratives so that we can really support our residents and get them, you know, information that they need, resources, and hopefully be able to have a voice in policy change at a systems level so that Mayfair residents and their power is acknowledged and feeds policy for this entire city.
Camille, thank you for joining us today with Latino Focus. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next in our show, we present a conversation with Chef Diego Hernandez Baquedano, considered one of the best chefs in Nato, Mexico. Adelante. We're here with Diego Hernandez Baquedano, one of the culinary stars of the moment. Diego, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
No, thank you.
So, Diego, tell us, what is it that you cook?
I cook mostly Baja cuisine. That's the place where I'm from. So I feel a big obligation of communicating the style of food that we do at the region where I'm from. And well, that's basically what I do.
Wow. Well, I want to learn a little bit more about your story. How is it that you started cooking, or how does the passion come from?
I started cooking like 15 years ago, maybe. It was just, I don't know, it was just like by chance. I wasn't pursuing a career in gastronomy, but I ended up cooking at this restaurant from this famous chef, Benito Molina. He's one of the best chefs in Mexico. And then I worked for him for like a year and a half. Then he recommended me with another friend of his. And then I ended up working in Mexico City, in Puyol and Pangea. I think those are 3 of the best restaurants in Mexico. So that's how my training started. Then I got into the culinary school in Tijuana and got back to Ensenada, which is my hometown. We opened a restaurant there in the Guadalupe Valley, which is where the 90% of the Mexican wine is made. It's a place for inspiration for the new movement of Mexican food that is happening right now all over the country.
And I know that yourself, you started a few restaurants as well. Can you tell us which ones are those?
I used to have one in Tijuana. That was my first one, called Uno. And we tried to do like modern Baja cuisine, but In Baja California, we didn't have an old tradition as in other cuisines of Mexico. So we started like using mostly the ingredients and the palette of flavors in order to create what the new Baja food will be. And we closed that restaurant in 2010. Then I got back to Ensenada and we opened Corazón de Tierra, which is the restaurant that I actually have. We planted a whole vegetable garden trying to get as much flavor from the soil as we can. And the whole project changes the menu every day depending of the day's harvest. And we use just local ingredients.
So it really is farm to table.
It is, it really is.
So what is different about Chef Diego? What is unique about your style of cooking?
I don't know. I think the way that I grew up in Ensenada, those are the flavors that I have in my mouth. So I just try to recreate that with all the ingredients that we have in the area. And in Baja, there is now a movement going on, but I think that the only difference is that I'm the only one that was born and raised there. So I remember the food that my grandparents were doing and all of that. So I just try to do it in a new way.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm very proud to be who I am and from the place where I come from. So I just try to represent that culture in my food.
Sounds like you're doing it great. And I want to know, what is your favorite personal Mexican dish?
There are a lot. Mexico is a very big country. From Yucatan, for example, I love the cochinito pibil. From Baja, I love all kind of ceviches, especially the ones that have sea urchin. From Central Mexico, I love quesadillas and flautas. And it depends of the region we are speaking. I have a different dish that I like.
Diego, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Now let's present our Art to Life segment with invited guest Quinteto Latino. Vamos.
Quinteto Latino is, we call it a wind quintet. It's also called a chamber ensemble. It's also called a woodwind quintet. There's a lot of names for it. It's 5 instruments: flute, oboe, clarinet, French horn, and bassoon. We perform music by Latino composers who are from Latin America or identify themselves as being Latino. They're from all over the world, but they identify themselves as having cultural roots from Latin America. And we do this in formal concerts. We play for families and kids and work as performing artists. But it's also an advocacy organization because we try to get other ensembles and other arts organizations to consider Latino composers when creating their performing arts season. So we advocate on behalf of these composers. Additionally, we work really hard to find and mentor musicians of color who are classical and contemporary artists, supporting them in their careers and hiring them as artists as well. I'm the founder, the director, and the French horn player within the ensemble. The story behind it is that I did play music from early childhood. I started when I was 9 years old. I started on the trumpet and switched to French horn when I was in high school. And I went on to study at a community college and then UCLA and then eventually a music conservatory in New York. And during that time, starting in high school, I also played in orchestras, youth orchestras and professional orchestras when I was in college. And what happened is in all those years of studying and all those years of performing, not one time, not a single time did we ever talk about or ever perform any composers who were Latinos. And I felt like there was a really deficiency in that in our repertoire, in the diversity of the repertoire that I was being asked to perform and asked to study. And you know, I worked hard at the school, and I felt like I wanted to study and talk about and perform something that reflected my own culture. So after college, I got a job in a chamber ensemble. This is what we do. It's called chamber music. It's when small group of musicians get together as opposed to an orchestra. So I got a job in a chamber ensemble, and I found that was going to be the way to where I could reflect my own culture, make my own programming decisions, and be able to play the French horn. And so after getting that job, learning about chamber music, learning the art of chamber music and the business of chamber music, 12 years ago, I decided to start my own ensemble, and that's this group, Quinteto Latino. And it's definitely a lifelong dream. I grew up with a lot of cultural pride. My parents brought us up being very proud of our Latino roots and our Latino heritage, and they were very involved in the community arts and putting on arts events and supporting artists always. And so it was very natural for me to start an organization that not only was a performing arts organization, but was an advocacy organization for artists as well. I started the French horn when I was in the 9th grade. And what I think I really loved about it is it was way harder than any other instrument I had played before it. And that made me stick to it. But one of the most defining moments in knowing that I could play the French horn, when I remember I was 17, I was a junior in high school, and I saw the first time ever a person of color playing the French horn. I was watching the New York Philharmonic, and there was the associate principal French horn. His name is Jerome Ashby. He's an African-American man. And I remember seeing him and thinking I'd been looking forever to see if there was a person of color in the orchestra, because all the orchestras I'd seen and I played in there, I was always the only one. It was the first one I saw, and that was the moment I knew I could play the French horn too. I use this mouthpiece and I blow into this small hole, and my lips vibrate. And so when I vibrate my lips into the hole, it makes a sound coming out. When I don't put it on the mouthpiece, it sounds like this. When I put it on the instrument, of course, it sounds beautiful.
My name's Kyle Bruckman. I'm the oboist in Quinteto Latino. The oboe, like all of our instruments in the group, it's a wind instrument. What's specifically kind of different about this instrument and the bassoon as well is that they both use something called a double reed. So they're actually two really thin pieces of wood that vibrate together. It's like a tube that we blow through in order to make the sound.
Hi, I'm Leslie Tagorda, and I play the clarinet in Quinteto Latino. I've been playing the clarinet since the 6th grade, and actually I started the clarinet because my mom made me, but I actually learned to really love the clarinet because it has like this beautiful, rich, warm sound, and it has a very wide range, meaning it can play really low to really high, and it has this kind of beautiful, happy, sad kind of sound. The clarinet, you play it by blowing through it, and it has a single reed, a piece of wood that looks kind of like a bamboo, and it vibrates against the mouthpiece to make a sound.
I've been playing the bassoon since I was in 8th grade. I started on the saxophone actually, but I wanted to play the bassoon because I wanted a new and interesting challenge. The bassoon is the bass instrument of the wind quintet, and so I often get to play low and get to be the bass line in the group, the foundation.
My name's Diane Gruby, and I'm the flutist, La Flautista, with Quinteto Latino. So I started playing the flute when I was 10. That's 5th grade, where I went to school in Hayward here in California. We all got to choose an instrument in 4th grade, and I started on the guitar. and it hurt my fingers and I didn't like it, so I switched to the flute and I've been playing ever since. The flute itself is different than the other instruments in the quintet in the way I make my sound, because we all use our wind, our air, to make the sound on our instrument, but I'm the only one who blows across a hole, not all down into it. So everybody else puts a mouthpiece in their mouth or reeds in their mouth or a mouthpiece up to their mouth and then blows all of their air into the instrument. On the flute, we blow across this hole. So some of my air is just going out into the room. Some of it is going down into it. So we are a little bit more like singers. Our instrument takes a tremendous amount of air. So we have to learn to take great big breaths and then use that air very, very well.
We perform all season a lot together. We get together for rehearsals, we perform in schools, we do formal concerts, we do touring. And so generally, every month we're playing anywhere from 2 days to 10 days together. We introduce Quinteto Latino to students in the community in a variety of ways. One way is by performing assemblies, and in the assemblies we introduce the instruments, the culture of the music, the language, and the spirit of Latin American classical music. We also do residencies, and where I or the members of the group will work with for an extended period of time in a school or in a community, visiting the communities, talking with the parents and the kids and teaching them. And the programming that we do with kids is almost entirely 100% with Latino students. So we work really hard to partner with organizations that have Latino students doing things in English, but also in Spanish as well.
Everyone speaks Spanish. Espanol. Everyone say Latino. Latino. Okay, now the name after me. Quinteto Latino. Quinteto Latino.
The future of Quinteto Latino is really about what's happening in the community, is building awareness and building self-confidence in kids and their creative process, in building the confidence and careers of musicians of color so we can grow our numbers, and building advocacy within other arts or performing arts organizations in really thinking and diversifying the composers that they're choosing to perform. I want to see some change in the greater community, whether it be regionally or nationally, about considering Latino composers.
Thank you for supporting Latino Focus, and remember that in each community there is beauty and strength. Gracias, and see you next time.